Thank you for joining me again. Before we go out into the garden, I thought I'd show you these excellent signs someone on eBay 3D printed for me for approximately £2.60 each. The service was very good, and I'll put their details in the comments below. After episode 6, I just put another layer of clay on that embankment because of a big storm that was coming, and it saved the day. Nothing got washed away. So more work to do this end of the track, but I thought I'd put topsoil along the embankment and start to put the plants in, which, as you can see, are getting pot bound. So this box was the first thing to go in. I break up the root system a bit and then put a lot of water in and then planted it and firmed the soil all around the trunk. Next, this ageratum, which I thought would look like a hydrangea perhaps, or some similar shrub. So here's a little conifer, also pot bound, so I need to spread the roots out a little here to enable them to find their way out into the surrounding soil. It's much trickier trying to video and do this one-handed, and I'm doing my best. But the thing is, you don't have to be too delicate. Just beat it up a little bit. I have found from experience that if you don't break the pot-bound roots up, the roots just stay in that shape, never spread out into the surrounding soil and tend to die. As you can see, before planting it, I've put a lot of water in the hole. And now I'm showing you another conifer, which I've already had a go at beating up the root structure with. I've also already filled that hole with water. It just looks dry because of the compost I've brushed off in the beating up the roots exercise. There was a very tight square when I took it out of the pot. So firming it in nicely after watering it again. Make sure it's got a good covering of soil around the root base. I've done that with all the plants. Two things to notice here: the before roots on that thyme in the middle, and the Syrinchium over to the right, which hopefully will look like mini irises for the railway. And now you can see the root ball of the thyme that I've broken up. I then planted it with lots of water and followed the same pattern for the other plants. The next thing I want to do is to put some felt under the track before putting ballast down. Here's one I made earlier, as they say in Blue Peter. I'm going to take you through the next section with me. Not that it's a difficult job. First was to cut a 7-inch wide piece of felt. So having checked the area that was going to be covered, I then cleared away the soil from the edge of the brick to allow the felt to be glued to the brick. The only glue that I could find that appeared to be suitable was this Gorilla Glue. If I could have found anything else that worked for inside and outside, I would have got something that wasn't in these tubes. My experience with silicone in these gun mechanisms is always that I get in a right mess. The glue didn't seem quite so tricky though, and I'm sure other makes are available other than Gorilla. So I put glue along the top edge and the bottom edge, which will be on the sides of the bricks, and then some in the centre section to go on top of the bricks. Then the job of trying to stick the felt to the side of the brick, getting it nicely tight and bent without getting myself caked in this white glue. And it was a lot harder than I expected to make the folds in the felt. If I was doing this again in the future, I would make sure there was no soil in the way first. I got a bit too ahead of myself trying to put the plants in, really. Clear bricks would have been a lot easier, as I found out with my next section. So as you can see, I did get the edge bent over and then flattened the top. Just use some chunks of slate to try and push the felt to the brick before I could put the soil there, just so that it would dry stuck to the brick. And then the same process of pushing the front edge of felt down and onto the bricks. Laying the track back down now, really to see how it looks, but also to keep it safer and less likely to get broken. And the small rocks here are just to help hold the felt down while it dries. And whilst I'm pushing against the felt with more soil. So now I'm bringing the topsoil edge up to the top of the bricks so that it will look like in real life that the soil comes all the way up to the track bed on the embankment. So I was going to move that rock off the soil. I don't want it to look like a rockery. But then I thought it might be nice to have one or two rocks pushed into the hillside. Again, hoping to make them look fairly natural. And as that particular piece is not slate, I won't need it in the quarry. So the soil on both sides of the embankment was topped up. I'll have to see what happens when it rains. I may need to add a further amount. We'll see. I decided to add a little bit more glue at the joins of the felt as it was lifting a little bit. I then put some stones on the join to hold down that piece of roofing felt before then washing the soil off the felt. Whilst I was at it, I gave the plants a good water too. Next job, to transplant this moss from elsewhere in the garden onto the railway layout. I knocked off a lot of the excess soil and then proceeded to pull out all the bits of plant and grass that were not moss. So a reasonable batch of moss to transplant. So as you may have heard me say before, I'm hoping this will look like grass on the layout. And I planted various patches of it on the embankment. I have no idea if it will take, but it's a weed where it was, and I'm a two chances gardener. It will live or it will die. Fingers crossed, it will live and do a nice little job of looking like hay or grass, and it won't need cutting. So I laid a bit more felt without taking you with me, not wanting to bore you to tears if I haven't already. So that's the straight on the rear side of the layout done. Next, to level this curve, I added a bit more clay and now need that to dry out. And here I have a bucket of clay lumps that I am trying to soften with more water. So after softening the clay, I put another piece of felt down, and then the next day did more clay work under the track. These rocks are kind of a trial to see what they would look like between those rocks this side of the track, and you'll see my foot in a moment. I'm going to dig a hole and put in a quarry scene. So then that's the back of the quarry, if you like. But I may need to look at the striations of the rock and reconsider the positioning. What do you think? Do you think all the striations in the rock need to go in the same direction? Do you think anyone will notice one way or the other? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you. I'm hugely grateful to those of you who have already subscribed, commented on other videos or liked them. Please do so here too if you've enjoyed the watch, and hopefully you'll come back and see what happens next. Thank you again. Bye.